How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today, we are going to take a look at this old, dirty, and used 2016 Mazda CX-9. And it's not any 2016 Mazda CX-9, it's my old, dirty, and used 2016 Mazda CX-9. You're probably wondering, why are we looking at this, Yosef? And the reason is because, well, I've owned this car now for about 7 years. And after going through its paces with the kids and the family life, the big question is, would I buy it again, having had the experience with it and knowing what I know about it today? But before I get into the video, if you're new to the channel, my name is Yosef. I happen to be a car enthusiast with 3 kids, and I used to sell cars in the past. So if you're interested in my perspective, please subscribe. All right, now on with the video. Alright, so to give a little context, I wanted to make this video because I think most people, when they're interested in a car, they just go to the dealership and lease or finance a brand new car. But not everybody has the money to do that. And the big question is, should you? Should you take a look at a car that is almost 10 years old? Does it make sense? Or is it just a waste of money and it's going to be a pile of problems? Well, today we are going to find that out. And I have a lot of perspective around this because I have owned this car now for about 7 years. And I've put it through its paces. My wife and I use it for the daily activities. The kids go in there, we do the groceries, we do all that good stuff. And we just came back from a road trip in Miami. So we put a lot of miles on it, and I think that'll be an interesting story to tell. So this is a 2016 Mazda CX-9 Signature. And about 7 years ago, my wife and I bought it from Mazda of Toronto, shout out Mazda of Toronto, for about $39,000. And it was a demo vehicle. It was slightly used. It was owned by the dealer. This is the one they shuttled everyone around it for test drives and things like that. So it had about 22,000 kilometers on it. But if I would have bought this exact same spec, brand new from the dealership, it would have cost well over $55,000 Canadian. And now this specific vehicle is worth about $20,000 Canadian. So in US dollars, about 50 bucks. But the thing is, you would probably assume that for $20,000 Canadian today, you would be buying a pile of nuts and bolts, something that's totally destroyed, that's beat up and has a torn interior, that's about as well equipped as my 3-year-old daughter's tricycle. But that is not the case. This car was fully loaded in 2016 and it came with all of the features, all the bells and whistles, and it still feels modern today, which we'll explore. And it was interesting because when I bought this vehicle, I was going shopping with a friend of mine for a Volvo XC90, and we took a look at that and I brought him to see the Mazda CX-9, and to be honest with you, 95% of the features that we had in the Volvo, we got in this car too. The biggest difference was we didn't have a 360 camera or the option for a hybrid model. But other than that, pretty much everything was the same in terms of the types of specs and features that we would have had in the XC90. And it really begs the question, what are you getting for some of these other very expensive cars? And sometimes these 10-year-old cars have all the features that you might want. So let's explore them together. I've always loved the look of the Mazda CX-9. And I think it has a timeless, very modern look, and it even looks modern amongst some of the most cool and exciting cars today. Just excuse the winter rims that I've got there. But other than that, it's got a very clever, modern 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that puts out about 225 horsepower and over 300 pound-feet of torque. And it uses a 6-speed automatic transmission, no CVT garbage, and it has all-wheel drive as well. And it gets relatively good fuel economy for a vehicle of its size. It's also a 7-seater with Nappa leather, a power liftgate, has memory heated seats in the front and a heated steering wheel and 3-zone climate control, Bluetooth audio, a Bose sound system, a backup camera, parking sensors, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, a touchscreen infotainment system with navigation, and we even have a proper heads-up display and a power sunroof. It even has a rear sunshade for the backseat passengers. The only thing that's really missing here are heated rear seats, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and it would have been nice to have a panoramic sunroof. But other than that, there is nothing that I really wish this car had in terms of features. What's amazing is that the interior design still looks modern today, and it's held up really well for being a family vehicle, and it even has some ambient lighting. And one of the cool things is that the CX-9 was ahead of its time with the light up front grille. Now everybody's doing it. So you must be thinking at this point, well, it all looks really nice on the surface, but what's it like to own? How's it like to drive? Well, I've done all the required maintenance and I haven't had any major issues with my CX-9 other than normal wear and tear for over 100,000 kilometers. I've replaced brakes, suspension components, spark plugs, tires, oil changes, and I had a small oil leak which cost me about $1,100 to fix, but other than that, nothing out of the ordinary. And insurance is also relatively low, and it uses regular gas to fill up. So you're probably wondering, how does it drive? Well, my wife and I took the kids to Miami in this car, and we drove a round trip combined almost 4,600 kilometers. So it was an interesting experience, but I learned so much about how this car drove just from that trip. It was a tight squeeze, but we managed to fit all 3 kids and all of our stuff for 2 weeks in the back of this thing. And to be honest with you, it did a really great job. It was really quiet. It was really comfortable. There were no rattles or squeaks or any sort of weird things that you would normally expect from a car this old. The suspension handled everything really nicely. It glided and ate up the miles really well. The cruise control worked phenomenally well for a car of this age. It's got the adaptive cruise control that helps maintain the speed, and overall, I was really impressed. You would expect a car like this to just feel a little old and falling apart, and you just don't get that experience from this car. The biggest frustration though, and this is the one thing that drove us absolutely crazy, are the comfort of the seats. Now, when I said the car is comfortable, I mean, it's got all the appointments that you would want. The sound system is good, it's relatively quiet, it's insulated well, you've got all the charge ports that you could possibly need, but the seats are so uncomfortable if you're driving this thing for more than 20 minutes. It was so uncomfortable, in fact, that my wife and I considered maybe selling the car in Miami and leaving it there and getting something different for the drive home. It literally feels like you're sitting on a pile of rocks when you've been in this thing for more than an hour. And that to me is just so frustrating. And one other thing to note about the comfort, you know, I thought maybe this was a 2016 Mazda CX-9 problem, but I recently just drove the 2025 CX-50 hybrid, and I drove the new Mazda CX-90, and to be honest with you, all of those seats were firm as well. It's not unique to just this particular car, so it's not that we've sat in it and worn down the padding all that much. It's something that Mazda, I don't think, does a really great job of. Their seats are very supportive and they're nice, but when it comes to long-term comfort, when you're sitting them for a long time, that is one thing they don't do well at all, unfortunately. The other sort of challenge with this vehicle is the power. It doesn't have a lot of power, and you think that 225 horsepower, that sounds great. It does on paper, but for a car of this size, it just wasn't enough. And so that was a bit frustrating. Other than that though, it was a great drive and everything worked. There were no issues with any of the features of the car. The navigation worked really well. Everything worked as it should. And so from that perspective, it was a great long road trip type of vehicle. The suspension is really tight. It's damped really well for being comfortable, but also has a little bit of that sporty flair to it. The steering is really precise for a vehicle like this, and it's weighted nicely. It just drives really well. And you'd be fooled if you wore a mask and you didn't notice that this was a 10-year-old car or an almost 10-year-old car. You'd be fooled to think that this is a brand new vehicle. I mean, everything is held up really well. There's a few little wear marks on obviously the seats and stuff like that, and the steering wheel has shown its age, but apart from that, the technology is still great and holds up relative to a lot of the other vehicles that you could buy for, we'll call it the $30,000 range. And so should you consider a 10-year-old car to buy? Well, if it was well maintained, I don't see why not. You see, there is nothing new that you can buy for around $20,000 that will give you so much value for your money. The CX-9 is modern enough to have everything most people want. It can fit a family of 7 and is relatively reliable, good enough on gas, and it has all of the features that you probably would want to make you comfortable. And to buy something like this today for a young family starting out, you would have to sell literally a couple limbs to be able to afford it, or lock into a monthly lease cost that costs more than most people's mortgages from 20 years ago. New vehicle prices are so high right now, and they're not going down anytime soon. And despite having more technology, it's not always better. Not everyone likes all the touch buttons or having a super complicated drivetrain with all the hybrid systems and all that kind of stuff, or automatic everything that slams on the brakes every time you put your car in the garage. Cough, Golf R. The other big consideration is you don't have to worry about monumental depreciation. And that's one of the great things about buying a used car. And in this case, paying $20,000 for this car saves you well over $40,000 from buying this brand new. And to be honest with you, you could probably drive it a few years and not cost you more than $2,000 or $3,000 in total cost of ownership. So it's not a bad deal. Plus, the CX-9 looks really fresh, and I think it'll stay looking modern for a long time, so you won't feel like you're super outdated. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. That's all I really got to say about this car, but I hope you found this insightful and helpful. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.